My little brother was 8 years old. I was 19, and we were homeless, sleeping in my car. And you know what? He probably thought we were on some kind of an adventure or something. That he couldn't have understood what was actually happening at the time, right? I'm happy that he didn't know that we were homeless, because obviously, I was not going to confide in my 8-year-old brother about the turmoil that we were living in, the trouble that was happening in our lives. He was already going through enough. He just thought we were hanging out. Because we were. If you have watched the last couple of episodes, you know that my life was already falling apart at this point. My family had split up. This was around the time that my mom started to leave my little brother at my grandma's house to go, spend time with the guy who strung her out on drugs. And stability was, I knew a little bit of it because, that was, in my opinion, the only way I was able to provide the little bit of stability I was able to provide for my brothers, because I got a taste of it, But, if I got this much stability as a kid, my brother got just nothing, right? So at 19 years old, I suddenly found myself responsible for my little brother. I was not prepared to raise anybody. And truthfully, I was still trying to figure out how to survive myself. My house gets raided. We breach the lease contract. We get kicked out. My mom goes and takes my brother to my grandma's house, and my dad goes and does whatever he does. I didn't see him for a long time after this point. And what happened, like the catalyst of all this, like leading up to this point, my grandma calls me one day and she's like, I got to tell you something, but you got to promise not to tell your little brother I told you. And I'm like, Grandma, what's going on? She tells me that she finds my little brother and he had taken grass from the yard and rolled it in a piece of notebook paper and was trying to smoke it. And where did he learn that from? So I used to drive him back and forth to school, and I go and pick him up from school the next day, and I gave him every opportunity to tell me what was going on. And I actually had a discussion with my mother, once I found this out. And something I remember my dad saying when I was a kid was that, if I would have whooped you like I wanted to, you would have turned out different. You would have been tougher. And a part of me believes that. I think that that's probably true. I'm a mama's boy at heart. I'm super soft. I cry way too much, and I wear my heart on my sleeve. My brother and I are very different when it comes to that. My brother is the toughest person that I know. I've seen my little brother take souls out of people's body with his right hand. And I've always believed that he has a much bigger hole to fill than I ever had. And I know now that that's a God-sized hole. The only thing that's ever going to fill that hole for him is having a relationship with God. And I pray every single day that he has a radical encounter with Jesus the way I did. But regardless, I told my mom, I think my dad was right when he used to say this, so, I'm going to smack flame out of him. If he lies to me, I'm going to give him a chance to tell me the truth. And if he lies to me, I'm going to smack him into tomorrow. And my mom's like, no, don't do that. Are you sure? Are you sure? And I'm like, no, I wasn't sure. I was not sure. All right. But again, I'm 19 years old and I'm in this situation where, there's no father figure in either one of our lives. So this is where I start to step up and try to be that for my brother. So I pick him up from school, and I got to give him credit. The kid stuck to his story. We had at least a 15-minute ride from where I picked him up all the way back to where he was staying at my grandma's house. And, you know, we're talking. I'm like, so tell me about your day. Just the borderline, the most basic answers he can give me, right? Nothing out of the ordinary, just regular day. I'm like, yeah, what about yesterday? Anything happened you want to tell me about? No. And he stuck to his story. I got to give it to him, man. I got to hand it to the kid. He stuck to his story. And so, you know, we get in the driveway. And I said, all right, you know, I told myself, he's got one more chance. This is his last chance. If you don't tell me what's going on, you know, if he lies to me, if he continues to lie, I'm going to smack him. And so I put the car in park. We're in Grandma's driveway. I turned to him. I look at him. I said, you sure you ain't got nothing else you want to tell me about? He's like, no, nothing. No. I'm like, all right. I'm like, take your glasses off. He takes his glasses off. And I want to ask him if he knew what was about to happen in this moment. But he takes his glasses off. And I tell him, turn around and look in the back. I said, what's that? What is that in the back seat of my car? And he turns around, and what I was doing was cueing his face up to where I could smack him. And he turns, and I smack him hard. And he just loses it. And it's taken everything in me to not cry as well. As soon as I smacked him, I instantly regretted it. As soon as my hand hit his face, I knew immediately that I should not have done that. And it, oh man, it's still, to this day, it's been, I don't know, well over 10 years since this has happened. It's still kind of hard for me to talk about or think about. It still makes me emotional to this day because, you know, there's no way he understood. And he asked me, why? You know, and I told him, I said, you lied to me, dude. And, again, that's one of the biggest regrets that I have, is putting my hands on my little brother like that. And I would never do that to my son now, you know. And, you know, I do my best to keep it together. And as soon as I pull out of the driveway, I'm just a mess, bawling, lost it. And it was shortly after that I went and got him from there and just never took him back. You know, it got to the point, like I said, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, it got to the point to where, man, I couldn't even go to McDonald's and get myself something to eat without thinking about my little brother being left alone at my grandma's house, sad, hungry, lonely. And one day I just went and got him, and I just never took him back. And the kid was going to school out of my car and failing miserably. And, you know, I knew I had to figure something out, right? The kid's getting F's. You know, his teachers are calling my grandma, probably trying to call my mom with no success. And everybody in my town knew what happened because my town was this big, and there's 20 cop cars at my house dragging my mom out of the house in handcuffs because she would not cooperate with them. And just a crazy mess, you know. And I was just trying to pick the pieces up. So kids going to school out of my car. The school year is almost over at this point. So I'm a kid going to these parent-teacher council meetings trying to tell these people, you know, they're trying to put my brother on Ritalin because they think he's failing because he has ADHD or something. And I'm trying to tell these people, like, he does not need pills. He needs stability. The kid doesn't know, you know, I didn't tell him all of this, but between us, you know, the kid doesn't know if he's going to have a meal or a roof over his head or somewhere to sleep when he gets home from school. How could anybody expect a kid that is going through that to pay attention in class? It just don't add up, you know. So eventually I ended up taking him out of Jefferson, which was where I graduated from, and we open enrolled him in Geneva. We lived in my car for 3 months. Like I said, it was summertime when this happened, so luckily for us, it wasn't snowing out, you know, because I live in Northeast Ohio. But pretty much what we did every night was we would go to Mosquito Lake and we would fish. We would catfish all night. We'd pass out in the car 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd sleep until the sun woke us up, and then I would rent a boat until noon, and we would fish, and then we'd go to sleep in the car until nighttime, and we just that was what we did. And you know, I remember on the nights that we weren't fishing, trying to, you know, park in different places every night because I did not want to attract attention to us. You know, somehow, you know, I look back on this moment and I think like somehow I managed to keep Child Protective Services out of the picture, which, you know, at the time I was really proud of that. But knowing what I know now, I needed help. I needed some help. I was trying to do something that I was never ever going to be able to do. And I remember, especially early in my recovery, the majority of the shame and guilt that I carried stemmed from that. It stemmed from me trying to be 3 people, you know, a mother, a father, and a brother, failing miserably at it. You know, my brother likes to say it was the blind leading the blind. And he's absolutely right about that. But again, I remember on the nights we weren't fishing, parking, trying to find different places to park, because I did not want, I could not, like I said in the last, I could not have any police interaction, because at the same time we're living in my car, I'm still selling weed. I'm driving around with jars full of weed and scales and just dumb. I would have gotten, think about it now, like, you know, I never had a relationship with God until late last year. But even looking back into the times where I thought I was as far away from God as I could possibly be, He was still there protecting me. Because if I would have gotten in trouble during that time, I would have went to prison. I would have got a child endangerment charge and who knows what else, okay? All we were trying to do was survive. Trying to figure out where we could sleep without getting in trouble. Trying to make sure we both had something to eat. And doing my best to try to make it seem like everything was okay. But really, it was the furthest thing. What we were doing was the furthest thing from normal and okay. No kid should ever have to go through that. That is one of the reasons why I say my brother is the toughest person that I know on this planet. I do not know another human being that is tougher than my little brother. And if you're watching this, little brother, I know you don't watch my episodes, dude, but if you are, I love you and I'm proud of you, dude. I worry about you still. I pray about you. But at the end of the day, dude, you survived something that the majority of humans could not, and I'm proud of you, dude, and I love you. And I know that if I keep making these videos, one day we're not going to have to worry about nothing. Anywhere I go, dude, I hope you come with me. When you're the older sibling, you don't get to fall apart. When you're the only one in your family that is trying to hold everything together, you don't get to fall apart. And I know now that that was the role my mother played for I don't even know how many years. It's no wonder that my mom became an addict, because she was the glue for a long time. She was the only reason my family lasted as long as it did. She was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, and eventually you get worn down. And I know now because I experienced it too. But like I said, when you're the older sibling, you don't get to fall apart. I did not have that option. You know, I remember one night we had got done fishing, my brother was sleeping, and I was just sitting there by myself thinking, is this really what my life is? Is this it? how long can I sustain this? How long can I keep myself out of prison, keep my brother out of child protective services, rolling around with jars of weed in my freaking car, and this kid is going to school out of my car? Like, if we would have gotten pulled over during that time, it would have been so obvious that we were living in my car. There would have been no explaining our way out of that at all. Maybe you've never had to live in your car, but maybe you've had moments where you looked at your life and you thought, there's no way that this can be my story. I didn't see anything past that. During that, I could not see further than that situation we were in. I knew that there had to be something better than what we were doing, but I couldn't have told you what it was. Recap, right? We got little brother going to school out of my car, failing. Me knowing I gotta make a move. I have to make a move. I gotta figure something out. And hello.
Yo, what's up, man?
What's up, buddy?
Fucking going through it.
What's going on?
My niece got hit with a tree branch. My wife later Rainbows, put her in emergency surgery.
Oh my god, dude.
Brain bleed.
Oh my god, bro. How'd you find out?
My mom called this morning at 8 o'clock and Will never fucking gave me the message to call my mom back. She left a voicemail saying it was an emergency. The motherfucker never even told me until after I did my fucking step 1 presentation. So I was dealing with all that. On top of that,
Well, are you gonna be there when I get there today?
yeah, I'll be here until 6:45. I'm gonna go with Joe Craig
Yeah.
the way out. Damn. What time you guys usually get here?
I try to get there between 5:30 and 5:45. I usually leave my house. I usually leave my house like 5 o'clock to go get Patrice. He lives all the way out in Eastlake, but I'll definitely be there. If you're not leaving till after 6, I'll be there before you leave. And Patrice, I'll talk to Patrice on the way there. And if you're up for it, when we get there before we start the meeting, me, you, and Patrice, and anyone else, if you want anyone else to join, I believe there's power in prayer, dude. We'll find somewhere to pray, and I'll ask Patrice to pray over your situation for you, dude, and just, yeah, dude. I'm sorry you're going through that, dude. I know that's a scary thing, especially when you feel like, you're trapped in there and you can't do anything to help, Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. I agree with that wholeheartedly. This is the best thing you could do to help is, be sober, and you can't pour from an empty cup, you know what I mean? You can't help nobody if you can't help yourself, dude. I don't remember where we were, but we're pretty much gonna close this episode out. I want to say that homelessness taught me something very valuable. It taught me that your circumstances can take literally everything from you, but they do not get to determine where your story ends up. I can, with 100% certainty, say that. I should be dead in a ditch somewhere. I should be dead in a ditch somewhere. There is no logical reason why I'm able to sit in front of this camera and talk to you. I believed that I was going to die a drug addict, but God had a bigger plan for me. There's so many things in the Bible that talk about, what was meant for evil, God will use for good, or God does not waste your pain. I believe that God preserved my life through addiction because I'm supposed to get in front of this camera and talk to you just like I'm talking to you. I can tell you for sure that if I can figure this out, everybody can figure this out. If God will do this for me, He is waiting with open arms to do this for you as well. These last couple episodes, it seems like, oh, this is the climax, but we're still building towards where things really started to spiral out of control. Like, even though it might seem right now that things were just as bad as they can get, my house got raided, my family split up, now my brother and I are homeless, living in my car together, like, oh, okay, I remember it's one of the things I said before I got the phone call. I knew I had to make a move, right? So eventually I kept doing what I was doing, and I saved up enough money to get my first place. I open enrolled my brother into Geneva, and we got our first place in Saybrook. So there was no bus that would come pick him up, so I would drive him to school every morning, and I'd have him, we would meet at the library, because the library was right across the street from the school. We would meet at the library, and we would do his homework, and then we would come home. And he went from failing to getting like B's, C's and B's. He got on the football team, he made some friends, and things were okay for a little while. I didn't want to just leave that story off on, tragedy, because even though things were hard during that time, it doesn't stay like that, After I spoke on Get a Grip podcast, a lot of people in the comments were asking about my brother. And, the truth is he's doing okay today. I am super critical of him. I'm always going to think he could be doing better, but he's all right. He's not on heroin, and he's alive. He's got a job. He's got a girlfriend. So despite all the hardships that I just shared with you guys, he's okay today. That stuff that we went through, it taught me a whole lot. It taught me more about what my mother went through than I could ever understand at that time. I spent the majority of my 20s so angry because I could not for the life of me understand why my mom raised me the way she did, but just totally abandoned my brother. And we're going to talk more about that in the next episode, because this is building towards when, I finally get introduced to hard drugs. Because at this time in the story that we're talking about, I'm still just smoking pot. That was about as hard as it got for me. It was just, I used to sell a lot of weed and I used to smoke a lot of weed. That was about it. I had never done hard drugs. And in fact, when I was going to those parent-teacher council meetings and they were trying to put my brother on Ritalin, I was so adamantly against pills that to think that, I ended up addicted to pills, just crazy. I would have never guessed that, but going through what I went through, it helped me understand more of what my mom went through. The first page I ever read in the big book was the page that talks about if I could be the actor and the director of the film, and if everybody would just do what I told them to do, everything would be okay, including myself. That described my 20s to a T. Okay? Because, you know, here I am, full custody, full responsibility of my little brother. My mom, I gotta babysit her too when she's around. And I was just angry. I was angry. It was a recipe for disaster. I felt completely alone back then. Just alone and angry. But what I didn't know was that life was about to get a lot harder for me, because eventually I found something that made me forget all the pain. Whatever I was going through, I found something that made it just disappear. It was called Percocet. If you are rebuilding your life right now, whether it's addiction, grief, homelessness, depression, or you're just feeling lost, I created the journals, and they're going to be linked below. Journaling became one of the tools that helped me rebuild my life. Journaling was something that I started when I was in residential treatment, and it's something that I still do to this day. Don't believe me? This thing's darn near full. I just ordered some more. I got a couple of guys at the treatment center asking for more journals. So listen, the odds are against us. The odds are against us. By the time I was ready to get sober, I was so desperate that I was willing to do anything it took to stay sober. If you are not desperate and in a place to where you know that if you do not make a change, you're either going to go to prison or worse, you're going to be buried 6 feet in the ground, I don't think you're ready to stay sober. That's just my opinion. The odds are against us. I know that just because journaling worked for me, it doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. It's not just a magic thing that if you do this, you're going to stay sober. But it will improve the chances of you staying sober greatly. Just saying. The journals, they're going to be linked below. And another thing I'm trying to do, if you would be willing to help me donate, I am trying to get these in the hands of the people that need them the most. I'm working on trying to get them into the residential treatment facility that I got sober in, but it's a slow process. So right now, in order to supply the people who are requesting them, I pay for them out of my own pocket. If you are willing to help me donate journals to the treatment facilities or a drug court program, or if you have a treatment center that you are affiliated with, I would love to be a part of that. Please reach out to me at thegandeeshow@gmail.com. We also have the guided meditations, which will be linked in the description of this video, and the Sunday Zoom group. That is accessible via Zoom to everyone anywhere. And if this story connected with you, listen, I gotta say this too. The last 2 episodes, thank you guys so much. We are almost at 1,000 subscribers. When I started this, I had under 100, okay? And sometimes I'm really discouraged because I feel like nobody watches these videos, but I'm going to keep, even if it just helps one person, I'm going to keep doing this, okay? But the last 2 videos I uploaded, they got such a great response. I'm like flat, I'm like blown away. You know, most of my long form episodes get like 30 views. The last 2 episodes combined, they're almost at 400 views. I was like, wow, cool. You know, maybe this is starting to catch on. I don't know. But if this episode connected with you in any way, it really helps if you engage. So let me know in the comments where you're watching this from. That's always a really cool thing for me. I love, you know, when somebody leaves a comment, I'm like, you know, I could tell by their dialect that they're not in America. And I'm like, where, if you don't mind me asking, what area are you in? They're like, Europe? That is so cool. What a time to be alive. We were born for such a time as this. We have a unique ability to reach people that will never get a chance to meet. That is one of the things that is just so cool about this to me. So, you know, when you engage with these videos, it helps them reach more people. So I want to thank you for that. Seriously, thank you for that. It really, it keeps me going. It keeps me motivated to do this while I work a full-time job. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, from everybody that has shown love on these videos, taken their time to watch them, left a comment, hit the like button. All that stuff adds up, so thank you. And if you got a story, I would love to hear from you. You know, I've been saying this the last few episodes. I want to add another segment to this show. I want to start uploading twice a week. So if you're willing to let me share your story and talk about, we'll have a discussion about how I relate to it, please reach out to me at thegandeeshow@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story. Our testimonies are so important. You never know how your story could affect change in somebody else's life. And before we leave, I want to remind you that, you know, it is Men's Mental Health Month. So all my men watching this, if nobody told you, I'm proud of you, dude. Alright, I know what it feels like to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders and got nobody to tell. I know what it feels like to have to keep a poker face on and act like nothing's wrong. I know what that feels like to be alone and not have anybody to talk to about what's really going on in your life. I know what it feels like to when someone asks you, how are you? Oh, I'm good. When you're in fact not good. Alright? Listen, check on your people, man. Check on your brothers and your husbands and your sons and your fathers. If your father's in your life, check on him. I haven't talked to my father in at least 5 years. You know? But I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, man. And until the next episode, I love you. And I'm out. Be with the guy who actually my mom, this was around the time, you know, and he tells me, you know, the basic, you know, just the, it's no wonder she fell victim to substance abuse disorder, you know. A lot of people, you know, after I did my first podcast, a lot harder for me, because and you know that if you don't make a change, you're either gonna die or, you know,